In a previous video, we looked at the question text portion of the question authoring page, which is where you put the text that students are going to see. So this is like where we put in the actual things to display to the student. In this video, we'll look at the common control section of the question authoring page, which is where you add the code for the question. So you tell iMathAS how to handle everything, how to grade stuff, any kind of randomization you want, you put it in here, and things of that nature. So this video might be kind of long because there's a lot of stuff to cover here, so I apologize in advance. So one very, very important thing to point out right away is this link up here that says Writing Question Help. If you click on that, it's going to pull open a pop-up that has lots and lots of documentation for basically all of the question authoring stuff. This is a great reference. I think that even veteran question authors still use this regularly. So if you forget the syntax of something, you can scroll through here and get some help. There's also some links at the top so you can jump right into things, things like that. So I will be regularly referencing this thing. I'm just going to keep it open in the background. So we'll go to the common control, and iMathAS was built with a programming language called PHP, and so the common control and the question code is kind of like a pseudo PHP. It's got the syntax of PHP, but there's some limitations, and there's also some extended features that aren't natively in PHP. So we'll go ahead and jump right into this. One common thing in any kind of programming language is to define variables to store data. So in PHP, all variable names start with a $sign. So we could create a variable named A, but we would reference that as $A. And then you do equals, and then we could do something like 7. This just says, let's let the variable A have the value of 7. So pretty simple here. There's this, I put a semicolon at the end of this line. You don't have to do that. In iMathAS, you don't have to do it anyways. It's good practice just to end a line with a semicolon, I think. This also allows you to have multiple statements on one line. So like we could do variable B equals 16 divided by pi, and then put a semicolon, and then we could do something like C equals 13. So if you have semicolons, you can put multiple statements on one line, but if you forgot one of the semicolons, it wouldn't understand what you were saying. It would think that this right here is all one statement, and the computer wouldn't understand that. So I'll delete these out of here. And so with the variables, we'll cover this more. But once we have a variable defined, we can actually use the variable within our question text. So for example, if we go down to the question text and we say something like, the value of A is, and then we could say, if we want to reference the variable A, we just put $A within our question text. So if we do that, quick save and preview, then we look over at the student preview and we see the value of A is 7, which is good. $A references the variable A, and A has a value of 7. So once we've defined variables, we can throw those into the question text just by referencing them by their variable name. So we can define variables to use within our question text, but there's also designated variables that iMathAS uses for various reasons, such as grading. So for example, there's a variable called answer. And notice that when I do $answer, answer turns green. That generally means that answer is like a designated variable. So answer equals, and then we could say what the answer to this question is. So maybe the answer is 9, we'll say. So if we quick save and preview, and we go over and we enter anything other than 9, so like if we entered 8, we get incorrect feedback. But if we entered 9, now we get correct feedback. So this $answer tells the system what the correct answer should be. So very important variable, but it's not something that you're going to use probably within your question text. It's kind of like a designated variable that iMathAS needs to know how to grade the question. So there's a handful of designated variables. If you go to the Writing Questions Help page, there's actually a handful of, it'll show you what a lot of these variables are. So for example, things like answer format is a designated one. A lot of the options for questions are like absolute tolerance, things like this. A lot of those are documented within the Writing Questions Help. Okay, so one last thing to cover in this video is we can actually add comments to our question code. And this is a good practice in programming. Even if you're not a professional programmer, it's probably a good thing to do, just so that if you go back to your question code, you understand what's going on, or if somebody else looks at it, they can understand what you were thinking. So if you want to add comments, you can do double backslash, and once you do that, those two backslashes should turn brownish in color, and then we can start typing a comment. So we could say something like, declare some variables, just a little comment there. And comments are not interpreted by the computer. So like the processor or the compiler does not try to do anything with this line. It understands that it's a comment, it just ignores it, and then it keeps running. So this is like for human use, the computer doesn't do much with it. It just reads all of the other lines that are not commented. So it's a good practice to add some comments to your stuff, especially if your question code becomes long and kind of confusing. It's good just to document this for yourself and for other people.